You are listening to GoodCast, a podcast produced by Goodwill Industries of Fort Worth, where we take a closer look at the story behind the store and highlight successes that have been made possible thanks to the generous donations of everyday people. My name is Justin Martinez, and today we'll be discussing one of Goodwill Fort Worth's newest programs, ReLaunch, and the importance of positive reentry for both the formerly incarcerated and the community. This episode is going to be a little different from our pilot. Today we have 3 special guests that are going to tell us a little bit more about ReLaunch and its mission. Our first guest today is Romney Guy, our VP of Workforce Development. Hi, Romney.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Okay, so first things first, tell me a little bit about you. What does your job entail here? How long have you been with Goodwill? That sort of thing.
So I'm over what we call Workforce Development and Mission Services, and that's basically all of our community programs or our external outward-facing programs. I've been with this Goodwill about 5 years, but I've been with Goodwill as a whole for over 20 years.
Is there anything that you think sets this Goodwill apart from previous organizations that you've worked with?
I love that this organization is very creative. We have upper management that's supportive of allowing us to be outside the box thinkers, to create true programs that serve the needs of the community that we're working with here. Like when we see a need, we're able to start like pilot projects and stuff to address community needs.
Right. So in the last episode, David was talking to me about the community needs assessment test that y'all do and how that sort of leads into the development of these programs. Did ReLaunch follow a similar path?
Yes. So we did community needs assessments last year, not only in Tarrant County, but Denton County. And then the other parts of our territory, we got community needs assessments from cities and other entities that had done them. And we used that information to develop a strategic plan to kind of steer us the direction that we needed to go with what the needs in those communities were. Reentry was one of the topics that came out across the board in every part of the territory that we serve as a big issue, where the biggest hole in services was employment for that population.
Okay, so we're going to be covering a lot of definitions and statistics this episode, so buckle in. The first term we're going to cover is recidivism. Recidivism is a synonym for relapse. The two are frequently used in the context of the prison system to describe the pattern of incarceration, release, and reoffense, especially in the context of people with prior drug offenses. Let me ask this, because in my mind it feels like the beginning of ReLaunch, we made a bunch of the print materials and stuff, so the beginning of ReLaunch and bringing that to the community fell very closely to the U.S.'s push for National Reentry Month. Was that coincidental? Was it sort of planned around that way? Or is it really just an issue that you think that many communities and many organizations are looking at right now?
In my mind, it was perfectly coincidental. It was perfect timing because we had already been noticing that we needed to have specialized programs to work with this population, that there weren't people doing the specific services we're doing. So it was perfect timing. We had just started that program and decided to self-fund and do a pilot project right around the time that the national unveiling came out.
Right. But it's not like we weren't serving people who had come out of incarceration before, correct? So what sets ReLaunch apart?
I think the flexibility. A lot of reentry programs are based off of a single funding source. Ours is partially self-funded, and then portions of our program, whether it be credentialing or our E2 program or other places, we may send somebody for additional services that come through. We have a lot of flexibility in the way that we do services. We take each person coming in and we do a full assessment and we do a person-centered approach. And I think that's what makes us different. We also have the flexibility because of the money that comes off retail to be able to spend money doing things like, hey, this grant or this or that doesn't cover bus passes, but this person needs a bus pass to get to an interview. And then, this same person now has a job, but they need enough bus passes to get them till their first paycheck so that they can keep the job. We're not just about placing somebody in a job. We want them to retain it so that they can move, out of their situation. So we go through a really intensive assessment with them. And then once we identify all the barriers, all the things that they have as transferable skills and other issues that may impact them, we then connect them with community resources to help them during the job process and the job retention process. And then we place them with a job developer and a case manager so that they're getting intensive services all along the way.
The added flexibility and security that ReLaunch provides for its clients makes sense for a lot of reasons. There is no one-size-fits-all plan for people coming out of incarceration. In fact, the U.S. Department of Justice's Roadmap to Reentry states that people should be provided an individualized reentry plan tailored to their specific risk of recidivism and program needs.
This is a more specialized program with the staff being trained specifically in how to work with the reentry population.
I really appreciate the factor of connecting them with community resources. I feel like ReLaunch is a very good first step, but you do need like a wider net of support. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's very important. Even on like a personal level, I feel like it helps a lot to have a case manager or whoever who sees you as a person and recognizes the problems that you may be facing and can work with you to find solutions to that. Is that something that you can teach, or what kind of staff do you hire to serve your clients in ReLaunch? Is it just being an intake specialist or like a case manager? Is it like a weird mix between the two? Like, how does the relationship between the staff and the client work?
So we have some training that we do online that's specifically for staff that teaches them how to work with this population. So there is education before they start actually working with clients. We also have like a transferable skills scale, a offender reintegration scale, and the barriers to employment scale that helps them work through the process and start conversations with each individual coming in. The other thing is, I think we do this in all of our programs, is we try to look for people who are passionate. Sometimes that passion comes from, I have somebody in my family who was incarcerated, and I know what it's like when they're trying to re-enter. It may be that they were part of some type of organization that went in the system and worked with offenders. We try to look for people who have not only passion for serving people, but passion for this specific population. We take a holistic approach, and like I said, it's not just about getting a job, it is about holistically providing services so that that client is successful. A lot of the research shows that if a client can get a job and keep a job, they're less likely to go back into the prison system, and that's what we're trying to do, one client at a time.
I did a little bit of research before this episode to find a couple of studies similar to the ones that Romney had mentioned. Here's what I found. In 2 long-term recidivism studies with samples from 30 states, the arrest rate for state prisoners was 83% over a 9-year study period. Of that pool, 77% of drug offenders were arrested for non-drug crimes within that 9-year study period. There were an average of 5 arrests per former prisoner, with 23% of the releasees accounting for over half the arrests. These include new criminal charges as well as arrests for alleged parole violations. So why are these numbers so high? There are a couple of reasons. Rehabilitation programs often have long wait lists. There's no set standard for how a reentry program should be run, so they all operate a little differently, and across the board, there's little to no prioritization according to need. So it can be really frustrating when people are looking for help and not able to receive it. Do you know how many people that ReLaunch has currently served?
So currently, we're serving about 20 to 25 people a month in that program. And, just for comparison, I think it's always important to look at, well, what does that mean? It's a 2-person staff. We are serving about 20 to 25 people per month. And typically a program, any of our programs that start out, the first 90 days to 6 months, it's like a slow buildup. And so it typically is like, 5 people a month and then 6 people a month. And it kind of slowly grows. We're starting off seeing 20 to 25 people a month. And that's growing because the more we help people, the more that word gets out. And then people are like, oh my gosh, I need those services too, or my brother needs those services, and they're sending people our way. And so I believe that program's only going to grow because the need's growing.
And I want to touch on how you plan to address that. How do you plan on growing the program, whether that's internally, adding more staff, going out to community events? I know that ReLaunch is already a part of like job fairs and stuff, but there are certainly other ways that we can expand that, whether that's through federal, state funding. What does that look like?
What we're trying to do with this program is what we've done with many of our programs. Start a pilot, figure out what works and what doesn't work, and then go to funding sources and show a proven model of success. That's what we did with our homeless program, some of our youth programs, many of our programs. So as we see the need and as we grow, it's my intention to have a hybrid between retail funding and other funding to scale up the services that we're doing.
Like many of Goodwill's programs, ReLaunch could be funded in part by government grants and programs. In addition to the national observance of Second Chance Month, the Office of Justice has a Second Chance Act program. Goodwill, as a nonprofit, could qualify for funding through the Bureau of Justice Assistance based on factors like recidivism rates and the type of individuals being served, among other things. Last fall, we had an event partnered with Continuing the Climb to host a job fair with a variety of employers. Yes. Targeted mostly towards people who were coming out of incarceration, but certainly available to anybody who needed a job. Yes. How do events like that happen?
So we are always looking for ways to scale up our services and grow them, and ways that we can become more relevant in the community so that we can serve more people in this population. So we're a part of like the Reentry Coalition. We work with the prison system, we work with local judges, we work with a lot of different individuals, but we're always looking for opportunities. And one of those presented itself last year, and it was the big citywide hiring fair. And we were able to pull a bunch of employers together because that's our specialty. We do that in all of our programs. So really quickly, we were able to pull a number of employers that were willing to give people a second chance. When we can pull a bunch of employers together in one area who are background friendly, that allows us to place in employment a lot of our clients all at one time.
What do you think would be the biggest factor in influencing other employers to be more background friendly? Does that come strictly from word of mouth? Is it statistics? Is it government oversight? Like, how do we get more employers to show up to these events and to hire this population?
I think part of it is word of mouth, because people go, oh, wow, you guys are working with Amazon to place people, or you guys are working with the Omni Hotel, or whoever it is. When they start seeing some of the larger name employers that we're working with that are taking a chance on our second chance clients, that helps. I think because so many people have experienced that in some way, whether it's their own personal experience or a family member, because of that, I think that more and more people are becoming open to giving people a second chance because they've seen in their own personal experience what it's like to try to re-enter the community.
It's at this point in the podcast that we're going to have to change direction just a bit. I want to be as transparent with you all as possible and still put together a solid episode that highlights the importance of positive reentry. We'd originally planned to release this episode during Second Chance Month, but due to the COVID-19 outbreak, we unfortunately weren't able to schedule interviews with the people that we'd planned, and it would feel weird not to mention our current status. That being said, I do still have a couple tricks up my sleeve as I'm preparing this episode from home. Last October, for Goodwill Fort Worth's 70th anniversary, I had the opportunity to sit down with two individuals who had come out of Goodwill's job service programs, Brandon and Jennifer. They were both featured in our Thank You Goodwill series, and I wanted to do a follow-up to see what had changed for them since then. And although they both came to Goodwill prior to ReLaunch's beginning, I think their stories are worth telling and serve as an example for what positive reentry can look like. Since that interview was done on camera, I'm going to dub over my own questions and leave their answers intact. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Okay, so for your intro, let's do your name, your job, and then tell me a little bit about how you came to Goodwill.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Moore. I'm the manager of Goodwill Staffing Services. I've been with Goodwill for 8 years. I started with Goodwill coming out of prison, and then I moved to the lawn crew, and then I got a chance at Goodwill Staffing Services to be a staffing supervisor.
As a staffing supervisor, you get to work with people with a variety of backgrounds. Does coming from a similar place help you connect with clients? What is it about your job that you love specifically?
Everything about my job. I really like that I get to help people who are just like me, and seeing people turn their lives around and becoming a part of this organization is really fulfilling. Some people that I work with do not have criminal backgrounds. They just had a hard time. They've had a barrier to employment. Seeing them go from a temporary position hired on to a state agency is very rewarding.
What is it about Goodwill and the programs here that makes stories like yours possible? How do you see that changing in the next 5 or 10 years?
I think everybody can have a second chance. It doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you've been through. There are so many programs and so much stuff that Goodwill does. E Squared is one of my favorite things that Goodwill does to help kids that have dropped out of school and get their GED at the same time. The STARS department is another one of my favorites. I see Goodwill just continuing to grow and to help more and more people and spread the word so that more people are aware of what we do and the resources that we have here.
My name is Brandon Reid. I am the owner and operator of the train station gym here in Fort Worth. I was incarcerated from 2002 to 2011. And when I got out, I went to a halfway house and I was unable to find a job. And luckily, a friend of mine was working at Goodwill. He got me an interview, and after I got the interview with Amber, she hired me, and it kept me out of trouble, and I worked for him for 5 years.
In your video, you talk a lot about the relationship you had with your team members and your managers. What position did you have, and what did you like about working there?
I was more of a donation attendant. I was just in love with being a donation attendant because I got to meet the different people and learn the stories behind the donations.
You also mentioned prior to your release that you had gotten a lot of certifications for things like plumbing, HVAC, electricity, in addition to your personal trainer certification. So what was it about Goodwill that gave you a space that you felt comfortable enough to start your own business? Was it the initial flexibility with your schedule? Was it support from coworkers?
So I had applied myself when I was gone. I could do a lot of different things, but the thing about Goodwill and what I like most is because Goodwill gave me a chance. And over the years, even though those people became my coworkers, managers, they also became family. Different managers, different coworkers, I still talk with them to this day. They've brought business my way as far as the gym. It's kind of hard. When I got out, you got your certain family and stuff, but you're trying to get away from the friends and stuff that got you in trouble. So you lean on more of your coworkers and the people that you work with, like the managers and stuff, and everybody was just helpful. So that's one of the biggest things I liked about Goodwill.
So how have things changed since your video released? Is that something that you share with clients, with people in the community?
Okay, so the biggest change has been I have become this local celebrity. I go places and people say, I know you, I've seen your face before. Oh no, you're the guy on the billboard, because I was blessed to have my billboard placed right outside of my community. So everybody was able to see it, and I became something like, Brandon changed his life. He made the best of it. And just to hear people validating me and telling me how proud they were of me. I pride myself on being an open book, and I pride myself on training the people that just don't fit in to a regular gym. So whether it's somebody that's fighting drug dependency or somebody fighting an abusive relationship, I have people with health problems. So it is a feel-good story, but it's also part of my testimony. So for Goodwill to allow me to share my testimony like that, and for it to be in video form, for me to share it with other people is a blessing, because they see, okay, you know what, Brandon is relatable. Brandon totally understands what I'm going through, and so that video, if they don't bring it up, to be honest, I bring it up. Like, hey, I was on a video, so I understand. So yeah, it comes up often.
What do you think needs to change for more programs like ReLaunch and more stories like yours to happen?
I work with Goodwill, with people that was blind, with people that was missing limbs, There was people that had developmental situations, and those people was able to work and do a very good job at it. And here I was, the only thing that I had to deal with was my record. And all I wanted was a second chance. And when you give those type of people that chance and you allow them to flourish, like Goodwill allowed me to flourish, it just makes the world a better place.
How do you either convince or give someone coming out of incarceration hope that they can find a job? How do you work with them to either build up that confidence or like show them that like, no, there is a way for you to succeed?
Mm-hmm. So we partner with mental health agencies that do counseling, but also what we specifically do is we work with them on transferable skills. And what that allows us to do is help them to see what is it that I have that's special that I can use to sell myself. And through that process, we help them to see that in themselves, that yes, I do have value, I do have skills, I do have things that I can use to get a job. And not only is my life meaningful, but I can have meaningful employment. And I think that's part of where we differ from most employment programs.
I mean, that's the mission of Goodwill, essentially, right? Everybody has worth.
Yes.
I think that's the main thing I want to focus on with this episode. ReLaunch is a wonderful resource for people coming out of incarceration, but it's not a program that is reliant on special cases. Both Brandon and Jennifer are incredibly hardworking individuals, but in speaking with them, it becomes clear that they both believe that anyone could step into their shoes with a little help. ReLaunch is a step in the right direction for people who want to take it and can help give them a base to support their own ambitions and goals. It's up to us as an organization and community to create spaces for that growth to happen. And that's where I think I'll end it for today. Thank you all so much for listening to the second episode of GoodCast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, be sure to let us know somewhere on the internet. And if you want to stay up to date on all of our news and information, just search for Goodwill Fort Worth on all of your favorite social media platforms. Until next time, I've been Justin, take care of yourselves, and happy Goodwill Industries Week.